That's everybody here. I thought we'd just kick it off basically by doing a few introductions, just kind of giving everybody an idea of who we are. It's super informal. We'll make sure we try and keep it informal, and obviously everybody can jump in with any questions just as we go. So yeah, Amber, do you want to kick us off with a quick intro?
Thank you. So, hey everyone, my name's Amber. I'm currently working as a junior software engineer at a big American bank, and I'm primarily focused on the front end. So, I don't come from a computer science background. I actually come from an economics and accounting degree, and we'll get more into how exactly that all worked out later on.
Brill. I think Flora, you're next in the list there. If you would mind giving us a quick intro.
Sure. Hey, everybody. My name is Flora, and I'm currently a front-end developer at SAP, also part-time product manager fellow at SAP. I come from a very diverse background before switching to tech. So I got my undergrad in chemistry and then grad school in chemical engineering before sort of like exploring different career paths and then switching over to tech, which I could talk more on later on as we go through the spaces. So that's me in a nutshell.
Good stuff. And Jesse, if you would mind a quick intro.
Hey, I'm Jessie, and I'm a software engineer at a cybersecurity startup called CyberSafe. Similar to the other ladies, I'm also from a non-technical background, have been in tech for 3 years now, but transitioned from a non-technical background, and I'm sure, we'll speak about that more in a bit.
Good stuff. Yeah, so I mean, I think we can probably dive in with the first question there, and I think a lot of you kind of loosely touched on it there. But obviously, you've all came from varying career backgrounds. How did you actually get into software development, and what actually sparked your interest? Again, feel free to jump in. Maybe Amber, you can start again.
Yeah, cool. I'm happy to. So, I was doing a mergers and acquisitions internship in Madrid,
Oh wow,
and
that's very different.
that was very different. Unfortunately, I had a mentor who told me the realities of my dream to be like work for the Big Four in finance, which was that you have to do exams, and if you don't pass them, then you're fired.
Yeah.
And that was like a big awakening for me. I was just like, I'm sorry, but I came here to live my life. Like, I just did not imagine graduating from uni to go through that. So I was just looking into like all the scary things that were like circling around at the time, like automation is going to take away these jobs. And I was just focused on what skills can I learn just so that my term is super, super high in demand in the future. And obviously when I saw how much it was paying, I was like, this is a bit of me. So then I joined Code First Girl, did a course with them. Also joined the Sky Get into Tech course with Jesse, and that's actually when I landed my role, which was really, really good.
Cool.
And yeah, I've been teaching with Code First Girls ever since. I really enjoyed that. And yeah, that's just a very, very quick run through.
Yeah. I think we can probably dive into Code First Girls and how
Yeah,
that
definitely.
whole process how that whole process was in a little bit. But yeah, Jesse, how about you? How did you end up kind of career jumping, I guess, and moving into software development?
So I started in a sales role at SideSafe and kind of didn't have any idea what I wanted to do when I first started in that job. So I joined there about three and a bit years ago now, and completely fell in love with being in tech. Oh, sorry, one second, I'm having audio issues.
No
One
worries.
minute.
Flora, do you want to just jump in while Jesse sorts her audio stuff out?
Absolutely. So for me, so while I was in school, I was working part-time really just to pay the bills. I never really thought about tech in itself and the industry. But then I started working as a customer service specialist with a tech startup company here in Montreal.
Sure.
And that was really like my first exposure into like the startup scene and tech. And I was like, this is pretty cool. And, I worked with engineers, with marketing, with sales, even as a customer service specialist. And then as I grew, in this career, I took on another role as customer success manager.
Yeah.
And that really really exposed me into product. And I knew from that role, I wanted to be part of a core engineering team, part of the, product decisions, part of the product vision and planning. So I started playing around I took some courses in Udemy online for a full stack web development bootcamp. But then I never finished because of work, because of life. And I moved on to another role as a BA.
Yeah.
But then the pandemic hit, and I decided to change my careers completely. I wanted to go back into that environment where I truly loved products. So I left my job, and I started a boot camp full time in person, and then virtually once the pandemic hit. So for me, it was just really my environment, being in customer service, being exposed to working with engineering, marketing, sales, being in that space really, pushed me to exploring this path in tech. So, yeah.
I've heard a few people come from the kind of customer success side of things. It seems like quite the natural jump, because I suppose you're really close to the product and you're really close to the users, obviously.
Exactly. So you'd have to understand the technical aspect of the product, and then really that to the customers who are slightly untechnical.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So was it the current company that you were working with where you managed to make that jump from customer service into dev, or did you have to kind of move a little bit?
Actually, no. So I moved a little bit. So after the customer success role, another company reached out to me for a business analyst role. It was they liked my background because I was, I worked with clients. I did the same thing that was sort of similar to what a BA would do. So gathering requirements, troubleshooting, and things like that.
Yeah.
So it was really from that BA role that I was able to sort of break my journey and then go into studying a little bit more in a boot camp before going back into tech. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Jesse, how are you getting on with the technical difficulties there?
Can you hear me a little better now?
Yep, all good.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so similar to you, Flora, I kind of had a similar kind of introduction to the technical side of things through customer success. But if I go back to the beginning, I studied psychology at university, and after that, I wasn't very sure what I wanted to do, and kind of got into the idea of wanting to be in tech, but no idea where I could fit in. And so saw that CyberSafe were hiring for marketing and sales, and I completely loved the product idea, the product vision, and was inspired to apply there. Got the job and realized that I was not made for sales or marketing, but really loved the company. And so I had the opportunity to move over into customer success, and that was where I really started to thrive. But the things that I felt I was good at were the kind of understanding customer requirements and understanding kind of how to help a customer get good utilization of software and all of that. I'm working closely with the engineering team.
Yeah.
And at one point, the engineering team actually ran a little introduction to Python course for the entire company. It was just an hour a week for 6 weeks, I think. And I was like, yeah, that they had me from there. I didn't realize it was possible to kind of transition into software engineering, having not studied computer science. So that was the first time I kind of had my eyes open to the fact that it was even a possibility.
Yeah,
it was kind of always a mystical process that I kind of saw that only the geniuses were able to attain the level of technical know-how to make that a career. Yeah. So when I had that little introduction, it was like, wow, this really is achievable and kind of possible for someone like me. And yeah, that was when I started doing a lot of online research. I came across the fantastic organization, Coding Black Females, and kind of through a lot of self-study and figuring it out with them and with support from the community, I figured out that it was something that I wanted to try and take the jump into. And yeah.
So in terms of the resources that Coding Black Females, I guess, supported you with. How did all of this start, and how did you really decide which route to go down? Because I remember when I first left university, so I came from a kind of a more traditional background. I guess I did a computer science degree at Newcastle Uni, and then went into kind of a standard software engineer role. But I remember graduating uni, and I really didn't know what kind of coding discipline I wanted to go for, even though I'd came from a very much a traditional computer science background. So how did you decide when you went for these kind of these sort of boot camps and all those kind of things, which programming languages to really specialize in, and then how could you kind of make that initial jump to land in that first opportunity?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think for me, having had the intro to Python and seeing the engineers at work using it, I knew how powerful a language that was, and that was instantly what I was drawn to because it seemed on the surface a lot easier to understand than some other languages, and it's quite verbose in that you can see a lot of like English human words that we use and not so much syntax.
Yeah, sure.
Amber knows about my phobia of JavaScript, so Python is definitely the one for me. And then also just Coding Black Females have such, similar to Code First Girls as well, and other organizations, just like a massive variety of events that are kind of like day in the life of a data scientist, day in the life of a front end engineer, and just like consuming that kind of content and seeing what I was more inclined to enjoy. I think just testing the waters by giving it all a little bit of a go. I definitely don't think I'm 100% set on being a back-end engineer forever, but it was what I was the most drawn to when I was in the research phase. And I think, yeah, just kind of testing it out and having a go at little projects that were more front-end heavy, more back-end heavy, a little bit data sciencey, kind of I naturally fell into what I enjoyed most, and that's what helped me to figure it out.
Yeah, that all makes sense. I think for me it was I actually took a job where I basically didn't know the programming language at all, and it was just sort of a, I guess, trial by fire, sort of figure it out on the job kind of situation. It was basically sink or swim.
Yeah.
So Amber and Flora, how about you? How did you sort of decide which discipline to go for, and yeah, do you feel like you made the right choice? Is it kind of a consistent learning opportunity? Yeah, can you talk a little bit about how you found that process?
Yeah, I think that this was definitely the most challenging aspect because I have so many various different interests in like a wide variety of things that I didn't know. Will I like mobile app development or front end or back end, or maybe I could be a data analyst? And like I always say that I'm sometimes the wrong person to ask because I was looking for a role in 2020, and that was just when I just felt like there are a lot of like not a lot of companies were necessarily hiring, so it was much harder to land a role. So I ended up landing a role actually as a data analyst, and I thought, oh, like it kind of makes sense with my economics background. Like I probably because I've always been a big fan of patterns, but then when I was in that role, I was just like, okay, yeah, this isn't something that I necessarily enjoy as much as I necessarily thought I would. So I think that it's definitely trial and error for sure. And it's just like giving yourself grace when you kind of realize that this path isn't necessary for you, and just making sure that you just go for it. So then I was just like, I'm still applying for like software engineering roles. And now that I'm in my role, they kind of said, oh, do you want to be front end, full stack, or back end? And I kind of was just like, oh, like, I want to do front end because I like design, but I wasn't necessarily the biggest fan of JavaScript. Like even in the Sky Getting Tech course, it was definitely very Python focused, and I felt pretty confident with Python. But now that I'm in it and I'm learning like basically on the job, it's been a fantastic experience like working with the front end. So yeah, I think that's for me. But then I also I'm looking at mobile development recently.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah, but it's just like I don't want to keep being a beginner. So I said, let me just like do this role at least for like a few more years, and then maybe I can have that conversation again.
Yeah, no, well, I think you kind of always have to be learning as a developer. That's kind of part and parcel. And it's it can be challenging. Obviously, you do want to specialize, but there's so many new technologies popping up, sort of left, right, and center. Well, what mobile technology have you been learning out of interest?
No, I've just been looking into it. Like I was looking into like I've been speaking to people like who are iOS developers. I was looking into Swift and whether I should be learning Swift or
Oh yeah,
React Native. But again, like I have to draw boundaries with
yeah,
myself.
yeah. That's it. Yeah, you can definitely get a bit of information overload, I think. Um,
100%. So yeah.
yeah. So how about you, Flora?
So for me, to be honest, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do initially. So I just signed up for like the full stack program. Um, but then I don't know. I think I like seeing my work, live. Like I'm more of a visual person, so I naturally just like floated towards front end. Um, and for some reason, I had this misconception that front end was easier in general. I don't know why, but once I started, you know, coding a little bit, learning, um, front end was a lot. It was hard. It was and JavaScript too. Like it was complicated, but um, I think one of the reasons I'm super comfortable and love JavaScript is because that was like my first, programming language. Um, so yeah, for me it was just I was more on the visual side. I love partaking in like in design, prototyping and concepts. So for me, naturally, front end just called me more than back end.
Yeah,
But I noticed that even being as a front end engineer, you also have to understand the back end and even know how to code on the back end, um, just because that's something you work with all the time. So essentially, it was easier for me starting off front end and then going back end to becoming full stack. I don't
yeah,
know if that makes sense, but yeah.
yeah. Definitely, definitely. Yeah, I actually started the other way. I was full stack, and then decided that I preferred the front end side of things. So I kind of got a bit of exposure to everything, and then decided to specialize. Um,
Exactly.
so I was wondering, is there any standout individuals you would say that really helped you guys along the way, or inspired you sort of along this journey of becoming self-taught developers? I know there was one person who really stands out for me, and it was actually a lecturer of mine. Um, it was, when I was at university, I found it very hard to make the connections between, right, how is this coding assignment in any way, shape, or form going to help me with becoming basically a tech entrepreneur or building products that actually I could sort of build a business around. And there was this one lecturer who really sort of helped me get my ideas out there and really put it out on the table, and to see the practical applications of coding as well. So I was wondering, is there any people that kind of spring to mind, in that sense for you guys?
Yes, I have so many. There were so many different things that I was looking at because when you're like come from a non-technical background, if sometimes it feels like the odds are against you. So
Yeah,
all I
sure.
needed was just like positive stories to help me through it. So definitely, I was doing a lot of reading on No CS degree, like
Oh yeah,
so many
yeah, yeah,
stories of people and their journeys and how they landed their role, how much money they're making, how much experience they had, and it was like very very detailed. It's something that I could almost mimic. Definitely a huge part was communities, like similar to Jesse. I'm part of Code About Females, Code First Girls. Code Bar is really really good. The organization that like will literally pair you with a mentor, and you can go through like any technical problems that you have, and that really helped me when it came to understanding how the hell to solve a technical problem. Because
yeah,
I'm
sure.
looking at this problem and I'm not thinking, oh, an array can do this, an array has these methods that I can implement to solve it. I just didn't know how to think like a programmer. So that definitely helped. I went to a lot of makers coding evenings. It was like it's called the Makers Code Accelerator workshop. Because at the time I was learning Ruby, which is a whole other story. I'm actually not going to get into it. But that was really good because they literally, like at the beginning of that workshop, again, all online, they literally showed you how to look at a problem, breaking it down, and making that connection. Because I just didn't even know how to read it and just somehow know that an array does this or there's string methods that do this. So that was definitely very helpful. And obviously the Sky Get into Tech community, that was definitely just the best thing ever. I've just never been like in such a supportive group. Like we're all keeping each other accountable. We had homeworks that we do together all the time. So I think that community definitely made a huge impact in my journey in general. But there was so I could list too many people that were involved. Honestly, I always feel bad trying to because I always feel like I miss out someone.
Yeah, there's some great names in there actually. That no CS degree, I found those guys actually.
Amazing. They're
Yeah,
really,
yeah,
really good.
really, really cool. Really good little website. Really, really cool niche job board. Really good newsletter as well.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. I agree.
it's worth checking out if anybody's listening and kind of fancying making the jump anyway. So yeah, how about Flora, Jesse? Anyone you'd like to plug at this stage?
I mean, contrary to Amber, like I barely found any resources or resource groups online when I started my journey back in in 2020. I don't know. It was really hard finding resources. It was really hard finding like a mentor, a support group. There was literally nothing online. I kind of went into the boot camp kind of like blind. But one thing that did help me and served as like um, my fourth was my family. Um, Fortunately, I have two siblings that are software engineers. My brother is an engineering manager, and then my younger sister is also a software engineer. And she really motivated me into starting my career in tech. Both of them, and every day during the boot camp, which was super stressful. There were times where I would give up. I'm working or studying like 12 hours a day, like 8 a.m. to like 1 a.m. in the morning. Um, I had my family to support me and, teach me things that the boot camp wasn't teaching me, some basic or like foundational engineering principles, how to approach a problem, how to Google, how to make use of Google and, search for ways to solving a problem, various research methods and things like that. So I got a lot from, having the support from my siblings and, for those who don't have a direct family member that is not in software engineering, I think one of the key things to do is I think there are a lot of resources now, here on Twitter, online, YouTube, LinkedIn, is to really leverage, um, the boom of this industry. And, now you can you can network with people like myself, Amber, and Jesse. You could reach out to us to ask questions. You could leverage, social media and your network to gain and, get that support and mentorship that you need, unlike me when I first started. So, but yeah, that's sort of like my, the support that I had from my end.
Great. Yeah, I mean, you can never underestimate the developer's ability to Google things. Um, it literally is a skill in and of itself. And yeah, I completely agree that the whole dev community it's super supportive. I think back in the day, it was very much quite a niche and hard nut to crack a lot of the time. Whereas now it's such an open forum. I think a lot of people are very very welcome and willing to give out really good advice. But you've just got to be super selective with who you take the advice from, I guess.
Yes.
How about you, Jesse?
Yeah, I'm so glad, Flora, that you touched on needing the guidance to learn how to Google, because I think that's something that took me a lot of time to realize that I needed to kind of work on that and seek help on it as well, and not be, yeah, not be so stubborn in asking for help on things that seem so basic, but as an engineer, they are actually really important skills to get the hang of. Um, so for me, I think I benefited really a lot earlier on in my journey from mentorship, and that's both in peer mentorship, like Amber mentioned with the Sky Get Into Tech girls, but also like more senior mentorship through Black Valley and through Coding Black Females, because what I found in the beginning was that I was getting so overloaded with resources, and each question I had, I'd research and have a look for the answer and come up with 100 different questions from that Google, that I would just get completely stuck in like, I'm never going to be able to understand all of these concepts. And so having a mentor was really helpful in that they were able to kind of reassure me that I don't need to understand everything to a completely granular level. Not everything needs to be understood in order to have a good foundational understanding of how to problem solve. And I think being early on in your journey and starting as a software engineer from a non-traditional background, you can be really intimidated by the larger computer science concepts, and it's really tricky to know early on which ones are going to be important and which ones can kind of wait a little bit until you've gained more context. So yeah, Black Valley was instrumental in being able to provide that space where I was able to ask questions. Is it important for me to know this right now? And sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes the answer is no, but I think it can be hard to figure that out in the beginning. So yeah, I'm really grateful for that.
Definitely, you have to be super selective with the knowledge that you take on at that particular stage. I think imposter syndrome's so difficult to get over at the start as well. You feel like there's senior engineers kind of left, right, and center, and it's super hard to integrate yourself as a junior dev, especially when you feel like you should know everything immediately. At least that's what I felt like when I first landed my first role, anyway.
Yes, definitely.
So if we just fast forward kind of past the coding boot camp that all you guys were on, and fast forward to the stage where you've kind of built up this skill set, you have some coding knowledge, you know how to sort of build and deploy an application, and now comes the next challenge of actually landing that first tech role. So how do you guys go about finding that first opportunity, and what advice would you give to anyone that's in a similar situation?
Network, network, network. I think that networking has just been instrumental, especially at the beginning of my career, because because they knew what I was interested in. They would say, "Oh, like, have you seen this role? You should definitely apply," which was really, really helpful. Like, even with Code First Girls, I did it at a company called Peer Consulting, and they had a graduate scheme, and I was in contact with a few of the people that worked there, and they said that they're looking for more Code First Girls, people that have done Code First Girls, to join the software engineering graduate scheme. And that was just super helpful. And I really, really like LinkedIn for the jobs. Haystack, I'm gonna have to plug you guys because the job board is amazing. I don't know why I'm obsessed with job boards to this day, but the interface on the app is really, really good. So I would definitely check out Haystack if you have a chance.
There you go,
And
Danny, our UX designer's listening, so there you go, Danny.
hey, Danny,
You can take that one, mate.
you're doing a great job. So that was really, really helpful. And I was signed up to all of the career sites you can think of, like Target Jobs, Bright Network, all of the stuff like that. And she ended up landing my role through the Coding Black Females job board, actually. But they're all very, very, very helpful. And my advice would definitely be like, it can be quite disheartening at first, but like definitely use it as a learning opportunity, because that's definitely what I did. Like, even at peer consulting, when I interviewed there, I felt the interview went terribly because it just gave me a great insight into all the things that I didn't know and the stuff that I should really be focusing my energy on in order for me to eventually be able to pass these technical tests, right? Like, I remember she asked me what are the Git commands, and I was just like, I don't even know what a terminal is, babe. Do you know what I mean? So then that's when I was like, okay, I should really start taking this a lot more seriously and writing down all the questions that I'm asked, so I'm prepared for the next one. And every interview I was more prepared, which was really, really great.
Yeah, good stuff. Flora, Jesse, feel free to jump in if you.
I think for me, I started. I became a software engineer in the place that I started at 3 years ago. So I have a slightly different journey in that I have essentially stayed in the same place, but I've found a place where I've been supported and encouraged to grow and change. And I think that it's quite often people think that their first role in tech has to be a technical one, and they're putting the pressure into landing that software engineering role from zero essentially. And for me, I found it really beneficial to first kind of get the hang of learning what it's like to be at a tech startup and growing in a different role. And kind of, I've only found that being in customer success at CyberSafe gave me the advantage of getting to understand the customer. And I joined the engineering team, even though I joined with a very low technical ability. I joined with the customer perspective that has made me a really big contributor in important meetings. And like, so I think something that's tough can be starting as an engineer and feeling like you're not able to contribute for a while. And I was able to mitigate a lot of that feeling by being able to contribute in other ways. So a piece of advice from me is that you might be wanting to get your first tech role, you might be wanting to become a software engineer, and you're struggling to get that first role. Don't be afraid to start in a non-technical role and kind of make your way around the business from there. And that's something that I was able to do and I've really enjoyed doing. It's been great to kind of see two different areas of the business. And yeah, I think it's a great way as well to kind of know that you're in a place where you are supported, and that if a company is willing to retrain you and put you somewhere, move you around in a department, I think that that's a good sign in terms of how invested they are in your success and your growth.
Yeah, completely agree with that. I think it's super important to try and find an organization or a company that invests in the people to that extent, I would say. If you've got a great person and they want to move career, then that's entirely up to them. The hard part is just getting that great person in the business in the first place, I think. Flora, how about you? What challenges did you face when it came to landing that first tech role, and is there any advice that you'd like to give anyone in a similar situation?
Right. So for me, it was hard, but luckily I did have connections and networks based on my previous roles that were non-tech. So I was I was already in connections with some recruiters from, some of these tech companies prior to even switching to tech. So it was slightly easier for me to just, reach out again and mention that I was interested in a job I found on their website. So if you currently have, so one thing I would advise is, you know, once you're done with your boot camp, or actually a few weeks before you graduate from your boot camp, it's always a good thing to think ahead. You want to have your resume ready, I would say at least 2 to 3 weeks before you graduate. And you want to even start applying right away before you graduate, because some of these programs, for example, apprenticeships programs, let's say with Shopify or with Twitch or whatever, usually they're very like seasonal and timed. So you want to be looking ahead, way ahead before you graduate, to see what's out there in the job market, to see, who are the right people I should be connecting with, you know, prior to graduating, so that when I graduate, I know like I've set and laid down my foundation to like kick things off and start like vigorously applying for jobs. So that's what I did prior to graduating. I had my resume ready. I was applying to some of the internship and apprenticeship programs that come out, way before I would have graduated. And I was also already like reaching out to recruiters, connecting with people, most especially on LinkedIn. I kid you not, I would apply to, I would say maybe 20 to 30 jobs a day. So like 80 to 100 jobs a week. It sounds ridiculous, but that was really like my full-time job at that time, to look for a job. So, with the volume of jobs I was applying to, I would at least get like one or two, callbacks, which was kind of sad, given the amount of jobs I was applying to. But I feel if you're, in that mode or mindset where like you give yourself like a timeline, or you time box yourself and say, you know what, I want to get a job in a month or in 3 weeks or in 2 weeks. You have to do these things. You have to network, like crazy. You have to apply to, jobs, like crazy as well, right? Not to put pressure on yourself or on anybody. I did take like a week, 2 weeks off after the boot camp to just like relax and, take care of myself. But once I was ready, I, went back at it and then started networking and then started, applying to these jobs. And one thing I would say is, especially coming from a non-traditional background, is that um, the interview styles for bigger companies like fan companies are slightly different from interviews with smaller or startup companies. So if you're not comfortable with lead code kind of questions, if you're not comfortable with, let's say, data structures or algo, things like that, binary trees, things that they might not have taught you in the bootcamp, um, you might want to start applying for roles with smaller companies who are more geared towards understanding, your projects in the boot camp, your journey, your engineering mindset, things like that. So I would focus more on like maybe go to angels lists where like, a lot of the startup and, angel companies post their openings and invest your time in researching and looking up the different startups in your city and apply to those. And then if you feel you're ready to apply to fan companies, which are way more competitive because you have other computer science grads out there also applying to these roles, go for it. It's also a good learning experience. And who knows, maybe you might also land something with those kinds of companies. But I would focus on the startups, the medium-sized companies, because they would focus more on the projects that you've done and ask you more high-level questions and also some technical questions, but not as rigorous as fan companies. So yeah.
Yeah, some great words of advice, I think, from all of you there. It just kind of goes to show just how challenging it is to land that first role as I guess early years talent. We've seen it on Haystack, especially. We get a whole host of junior engineers who maybe have 0 years commercial experience or 1 year commercial experience, but there just isn't the level of jobs to supply them with, and it's really challenging, to be honest. There's no kind of silver bullet or one size fits all. You kind of have to do all of it, unfortunately.
Yeah, just quickly on that, I really love that you guys are allowing companies to post for free for if it's a junior or entry level role, because I think that you do kind of have to incentivize
Yeah,
other
definitely. Yeah.
companies, because that's the bit I don't understand about the industry is there seems to be kind of like a lack. There's a massive gap for mid to senior level engineers, but nobody wants to put the time and investment into the juniors, and it
Yeah,
just, yeah, it doesn't
definitely.
make sense to me.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that was exactly it. We had to incentivize businesses to kind of make the first move there, um, and it is a really really tricky challenge to solve, I think. It's probably quite a nice segue into my next question, actually. And I would imagine the answer to this is a lot, but what else do you guys feel like companies, schools, other institutions can be doing to actually support people from either moving into that entry level role or specifically from underrepresented backgrounds as well? Just feel free
That's
to
a
jump in.
big question.
It
Oh, that's
is.
such a good question.
There's a there's a
Um,
there's a lot that can go into that question, I think, as well.
yeah,
There isn't just it's not just a one size fits all answer, I think.
yeah, I know. Because I remember, like, even at 16, when people would come and, like, they say, "Oh, I do this," I wouldn't necessarily know what that means. I think that, like, a great thing that I definitely would have wanted when I was, like, young girl, just like a few years ago, was like very well paid, of course, but like internships, because I think internships makes a big difference because you literally get that hands-on like experience. And with tech, it's completely different to anything I've ever applied for. That's why it took me so long to actually accept the interview process. Because, like, I'm sorry, but if you're going for like an accountant role, you don't have to have a portfolio of all the accounts that you've balanced in the past. So like when it came to tech and you had to have all this like portfolio and this prove like you have to prove your skills before you're in the role, that was a very hard pill for me to swallow. Because I'm just like, I'm eager, I'm keen. I can literally learn this on the roll. Like why does it come with all these prerequisites? I just didn't get that. So I think that definitely if they're not willing to change interview process in that way, just to make sure that these institutions provide that knowledge for us and give us room to like explore various different languages, various different concepts. So you kind of like get a chance to experience all the different things out there, which is actually a lot, but it's a very, very big question. I'll stop there.
Yeah, it's a tricky one to answer. I appreciate that. How about you, Flora or Jesse? Feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I think that for me personally, if I try and think of, I'm a black woman from a very low socioeconomic background. Parents didn't go to university. It didn't even occur to me that this was an option in terms of career for me. And it was impossible for me to even imagine that it could be something that I'd be able to achieve. So when I had the opportunity just from work to kind of have a go, even if it wasn't a very basic, like a hello world and having a go at really basic Python assignments, that was kind of the bit that was the light bulb moment for me where it's like, oh, this isn't beyond me, and it's so I think giving people the opportunity to see themselves in that role is what will give them the motivation to pursue it. So I think that something that can be done to make that more accessible for people is, yeah, the option to have a play around, the kind of introduction. I know that kids nowadays are literally learning Python in school, which is crazy to me, and a little bit scary if I'm honest. But yeah, just seeing that you are able to do it and kind of having the opportunity to play around, I think, is something that could go a long way in terms of helping people.
Yeah, I think it's great to see that we're actually starting to teach code in school now. I remember IT back in the day used to just be this is what a Word document looks like, whereas it's now kind of practical applications and sort of actually building programs and seeing how it can work in the real world, which I think is exactly the direction that it needs to go in.
Yeah, oh my God. Sorry, just to jump in there, like
No worries.
remembering trying to do Excel documents as part of assignments in IT at school, and like that could have been one of the reasons that it put me off doing anything computer related. So, because it just seems so boring from
Yeah,
those lessons.
yeah. God, yeah. Learning how to do an Excel sheet as a 12-year-old is not particularly riveting, to be honest. Flora, do you have anything that you'd like to jump in on?
Yeah, sure. I would say like, I think a lot of these companies and, hiring managers, what they've seen is that, there are boot camps that people can go to and learn learn how to code, learn these skills, right? Um, you don't need to go to a 4-year college to be a software engineer. And I think now they can also see that a junior engineer could probably even pull off, the skill set of a senior engineer. I know it's a stretch, but nowadays you're seeing people graduating from school, from boot camps, who are proving to us that they could build awesome websites, they could build awesome applications, and they don't need to have 10 years of experience or 20 years of experience to fulfill their duties in their roles, right? So, with this age where boot camps are a thing, people are learning how to code with the resources online. People are proving to themselves and proving to others that they're capable of building great things with tech. I think a lot of these companies now are open to hiring junior devs. They're creating programs like the apprenticeship programs, like internships that are catered to those from diverse backgrounds. And even fan companies now are starting to open. They're starting to be less competitive. They're starting to be open to people, to diverse talent, and that's a good thing to see. So yeah, it's just now, it's just being aware that we can do this without, going to a 4-year degree college. We can do this by teaching ourselves, and everybody is aware about this, and companies are adapting towards this change. So yeah.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, I literally did a 4-year degree, and I've seen people come out of boot camps that are infinitely better developers than I am, and I'm quite happy to admit that, to be honest. So yeah, I think we're seeing a new trend of, I guess, genuine hobbyists who have picked up coding as in their spare time, basically, and because they have a natural passion for it, they've went out there, they've took action, kind of like you guys took action and really sort of moved into the space that they're clearly genuinely excited about. Yeah, thanks again, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us. It's been fantastic.
Thank you, guys.
Good stuff. Well, our first Twitter Spaces has went by swimmingly.
It went
no
well.
massive
really
technical difficulties, so there we go.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, cheers, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye.